Hey everyone, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and I am back with another 4K review for you. Man, October of 2021, what a huge month for 4K releases, and I'm so excited that I've got all these in, but I had to choose which ones to do first. There's Halloween 4K releases, there's the Universal Monsters, there's Columbia Classics. All these movies are coming in all at once. But what I wanted to do, since I'm still waiting on my Halloween set, I did get the Universal Classic Monsters set from Universal Studios, and I wanted to check out Dracula to start things off. I think that's probably the most popular movie in this set. Maybe Frankenstein is a close second, but I put up a poll and people wanted to see Dracula. So today we're going to dive into this Dracula 4K release, talk about the visuals, the audio, the special features, the packaging, and really whether or not this new 4K release from Universal and this new restoration is really worth picking up on 4K for your collection. So this is Dracula from 1931. So we're talking about a movie that this year is 90 years old. And after watching both the Blu-ray and the 4K and doing my comparisons, I did a little reading up on the restoration efforts again, just to refresh myself. I covered these in a previous video. It's actually there's a great video online that Universal posted that's also a special feature here called Behind the Restoration, Dracula. If you go look that up, it's a great resource. But I looked a little more into it, and it's interesting because this was actually sourced from an interpositive. So they don't have the original negative preserved. They have an interpositive, which is like one step lower than a negative, and it's from 1934, and that's what Universal was able to use to restore this and rescan it at 4K. Now they scanned it in 4K back in 2012, and the 2013 Blu-ray release of Dracula did use that scan. But it was a 4K scan, so it is a true 4K image, but they had to downscale it on Blu-ray. Obviously, they didn't have HDR color grading there on the Blu-ray release. And so those are the big areas we should see improvements visually here, is the upgrade in resolution, making the grain a lot finer, a lot more detailed. The entire image should look a little bit sharper. And then the HDR is a huge game changer, specifically for black and white movies, in my opinion, because of the way it plays with contrast, brightness, black levels. It really helps the blacks and the bright whites, and it really helps with gray uniformity and how grays, is this a splotchy image? Are there kind of blackish grays, or are they true blacks and true grays? That all helps here on black and white images, and Dracula was no exception. It was a big help. So the HDR was really what stood out to me first and foremost as the biggest difference between the two. When looking at the Blu-ray disc, the whites are almost too bright. They're washed out. It makes for a kind of pasty looking, almost misty image. It really doesn't look right. The whites just don't balance well. And that was the first thing I noticed, because the opening scenes are actually sort of bright. Bang, like on the 4K disc, much better color timing. They nailed it on the 4K. And then when you get into some of the darker scenes, one of the biggest differences was the flickering that was happening on the Blu-ray. And that's an issue with older movies. They kind of flicker, and the film is, I'm not a film historian, but I know that they do a de-flickering process. And you could see it watching the Blu-ray, how the blacks would almost like, it was almost like a light was flickering in the background of some shots. It would go black, then gray, then kind of almost like a light gray, and then back to black. And it was actually super distracting. And on the 4K disc, must have done some new color timing, or they just had this and couldn't use it on the Blu-ray originally, because it's so much better. The flickering is gone. You just get a black background, a gray background. There's no flickering behind the scenes. Whites are perfect, nice and white, but not too bright that they're washed out. And the black levels, just Dracula's hair, the coat, scenes inside his castle, things, backdrops, so much better here with HDR. So I thought that was the biggest win on this disc, was the HDR. Now the 4K detail was also great. This was a 4K restoration. It is a 4K scan, and putting it on a native 4K disc helped a lot. It's much more detailed. The grain is much smoother and much more refined, and that's really great because the Blu-ray is pretty noisy. I mean, it's a very grainy image. It's an old movie. They did as much as they could to clean up scratches and marks on the film and little artifacts and splotches and things like that. They cleaned a lot of that up, but it's so much better on the 4K disc. It's just so much more detailed. Edges are much nicer, and the grain feels like it's structured and consistent, versus on the Blu-ray, the grain was kind of all over the place. Some shots are really grainy, some are too much, some were like kind of smooth. I don't know, it's just the format, but having this 4K scan on a 4K disc is a game changer. And then that HDR, really where I see some of the biggest benefits with HDR and new color grading using HDR is on black and white, because it's natively either dark or bright, and HDR just handles those two extremes so much better than anything on Blu-ray could. So visually, this is a very nice step up over the Blu-ray and a must-have horror disc if you're a fan, especially of the Universal classic monsters movies. This is a great disc visually, and I highly recommend you consider upgrading, whether part of this set or maybe as part of an individual standalone release down the road. Now, the audio in this release is the same as the restored audio from the Blu-ray, which is a DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 mono track. Now, one thing you will notice on this audio is that although, the dialogue is very clear, I had no issues with, needing to adjust the volume or anything throughout the movie, although I will say I did turn the volume up a little bit past where I usually listen to movies, so you may want to consider that. But everything was really clear. I mean, music sounded incredible. The opening sequences, the opening title credits, awesome. All the different score behind the scenes, great music. It sounded awesome even with stereo. But the one thing you'll want to note here, and they cover this in the restoration video, you'll hear them talk about it, when they restored the audio, there isn't silence. Like there are a lot of scenes and moments that should be silent and completely quiet, but there's this low hiss that kind of sits, and that's just part of the track that they had. It's part of what they could work with. It had this kind of low hiss, and for some reason I thought it was, maybe it's placebo effect, because honestly I think these are the same tracks, but the hiss seemed to be a little bit louder on the 4K than on the Blu-ray. Neither one of them are super distracting, but just realize that it's not your system, it's nothing your receiver's doing, it's not feedback. It does have a low hissing sound throughout the movie. So other than that, which really is unavoidable and is much better than it had been previously on other home video releases where the hiss was like overwhelming and really loud, they did a great job with the audio. There's no complaints here. I don't think there's an upgrade over the Blu-ray. Like I said, I think it was just placebo effect. I thought the 4K sounded a little bit louder, but they should be the same tracks, and that's really it. So no upgrade there, but still a very solid audio track and a great audio restoration by Universal, especially for a movie of 90 years old. So now the packaging is part of this Universal Classic Monsters Icons of Horror collection. Now this has Dracula, Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, and the Wolfman, and Dracula is part of the set that comes in this little digibook type packaging. So it's got like a hard spine, it's got a hard plastic cover, but unfortunately what Universal did is they used sleeves, and I hate sleeves. They did this with a few other releases. Indiana Jones did this, and I just hate it because you have to kind of pull on the disc. And I'd rather just pop out, because I already feel like I'm scratching it just doing this. Don't love the packaging for it. I feel like for the price, could have been a little bit better, even individual like cases inside of here. And this is also kind of cheap cardboard. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but you guys know I hate these little just like sleeves. So that's a huge negative. But otherwise, the discs are, there's no artwork on the discs. You get some little bit of artwork on the inside for the movie. And then the bonus features, most of these are carried over from the Blu-ray, but it does include the Spanish version of Dracula with an introduction. So that's good. They didn't get rid of that, and that's available on the 4K disc. You get The Road to Dracula, behind the scenes on Bela Lugosi, Dracula the Restoration, which I had referenced, also available on YouTube, Monster Tracks, Dracula Archives, an alternate score, and then 2 commentaries, one by a screenwriter and one by a film historian, and then the trailer gallery. So that stuff's all available on the 4K disc, which is nice. I'm glad that especially like the Spanish version, if you did want to watch that, you don't have to go to a Blu-ray copy. It is restored on a 4K disc, but it is only a 2K scan for the Spanish version, as I learned in my restoration research. So it's not the best picture. The English version is definitely the best picture quality you'll get, but at least they included it here on the disc. So overall, while the packaging could have been a little bit better, this is, from an audio visual perspective, an incredible disc. Visually especially, you're going to want to upgrade, and I do feel I'll check out the rest of these. Obviously I'll watch all 4 of them and do reviews individually for each movie, but I feel like that's going to be the biggest game changer on all of these, is how much the HDR helps with the black and white images. I've seen this before on movies like Doctor Strangelove, on It's a Wonderful Life, some other black and white movies that I've reviewed, and the HDR is just such a game changer for black and white. When you're only really dealing with this black to white color scale, it helps so much to have that extra HDR color grading in there. So they did a great job visually. Everything looks awesome. The audio still retains that great restored audio from the Blu-ray, and I do highly recommend you add this one to your collection. It's a great release, and if you're a film historian, a classic film fan, or a horror movie fan, this is a must-have. It really kind of kicked off the horror movie genre, at least in America, and it's such an iconic movie, and now it looks as iconic as it should on 4K. So I will leave a link down in the description to this entire set. You can actually get it for about 65 bucks right now at release day. So that's not bad. 4 movies, you're talking about $15, $16 a piece. That's pretty good for new release 4Ks, especially given how much money went into these restorations. So I really think it's worth picking up. If you use my link, that helps support my channel, and I would really appreciate that. And that would really go a long way to help. So appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribed and like this video so others will see it. I really want these videos to get a ton of views because I love classic movies like this, and I think they get overlooked on 4K as to how good they can be. So many people are focused on these great 4K discs, or only buying the newest movies on 4K. Sometimes I still stand by this. The best looking 4K discs and the best leap in quality from Blu-ray to 4K is coming on these older movies shot on film, and even black and white stuff is a huge improvement. So hopefully you like this video, subscribe, and you can share it with friends, and others will see this so we can drive this format and specifically drive this release and get some sales on this, because I'd love to see some more of these Universal Monsters movies come to 4K. So thanks for watching. Make sure you follow me on social media. All the links are down in the description, as well as other ways you can support my channel. I really appreciate that. Thank you for all the support lately. I'm banging out more and more reviews. Like I said, Columbia Classics, Halloween 1 to 5, the rest of this Universal Monster set, tons of stuff coming in. Just got Demons 1 and 2 from Synapse Films. So stay tuned for all that. Lots of great stuff coming to the channel. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you soon.